Why is the United States suddenly in the business of blowing boats out of the water? Why without summation? More than 30 killed in 7 strikes in the Caribbean that started in early September, all under the orders of the same Donald Trump who wants a Nobel Peace Prize and who questions 80 years of U.S. military presence in Europe, Korea, and Japan. He's now gone beyond a war on drug trafficking in the Caribbean with not-so-veiled threats to overthrow Venezuela's regime. We'll ask about the operation, the resignation of the head of the U.S. Southern Command that's in charge of it, and the driver in a regional policy that harks back to Trump's Inauguration Day nostalgia for William McKinley, his predecessor who started the 1898 war that wiped out Spain's foothold in the Americas. Is all this really to please anti-leftist Latino voters in his Secretary of State's native Florida? Of course, we'll ask what's next for Venezuela, a nation whose leader, by all accounts, stole the last presidential poll. How much support can Nicolas Maduro garner in this showdown, both at home and abroad? Today in the France 24 debate, how seriously is the Trump administration gunning for Maduro? With us from New York City, Venezuelan journalist Germania Rodriguez-Paleo. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Venezuelan writer Vicente Olive, whose gritty detective novel, The Fish of Caracas, it's actually in French, Les Poissons de Caracas, is available if you speak the language. Soon in English?
Hopefully, yes.
Okay.
Who knows?
Pascal Drouot is president of LatFran, which promotes ties between France, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
And James Cohen, Professor Emeritus of American Studies at Sorbonne Nouvelle University. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
On the go, by the way, you can listen to the show wherever podcasts are streamed. Let's start with the latest. It's not about Venezuela. Colombia's left-wing president recalling his ambassador to the United States. This after Donald Trump called Gustavo Petro an illegal drug dealer. Emerald Maxwell has more.
The U.S. defense chief said Friday's strike targeted a vessel involved in drug smuggling, killing 3, quote, narco-terrorists affiliated with Colombia's ELN guerrilla group. An apparent expansion of a U.S. military operation on boats it says are running drugs from South America to the United States. Historic allies, the U.S. and Colombia's relations are now at their lowest point in decades, with President Gustavo Petro accusing Washington of murder and violating Colombia's sovereignty, and Trump calling the Colombian president an illegal drug leader, threatening higher tariffs on the country and to revoke aid.
They are a drug manufacturing machine, Colombia, and we're not going to be part of it. So we're going to drop all money that we're giving to them. Now they have the worst president they've ever had. He's a lunatic who's got a lot of problems, mental problems.
The U.S. is Colombia's top trading partner, and before Trump shuttered USAID earlier this year, it was the largest recipient of American aid in the Western Hemisphere, half of which went to fighting drug trafficking.
If there's one country that has used all its capabilities and that has also lost men and women fighting drug trafficking, that country is Colombia. And we have seen this offensive has increased even more in the last year.
But President Gustavo Petro, who first rose to prominence by exposing links between right-wing paramilitary groups involved in drug trafficking and corrupt politicians, has had little success in his own attempts to tame the country's coca-growing regions. In fact, it's gone the other way, with the cultivation of the raw material of cocaine increasing by about 70% since 2022.
James Cohen, is this a different story, or is this part of the same showdown that the Trump administration is now having with Venezuela?
It's part of the same. It's sort of an extension of the same because although it was initially declared that all the boats were Venezuelan and the people in them were presumably all Venezuelan, it emerged from Petro, emerged from Colombian sources that at least one person killed is a Colombian citizen, was a Colombian citizen, and Petro gave his name, and he's angry. I can understand that.
And at this point in time, then the recall of ambassadors, cutting of aid, soon-to-be tariffs. Pascal Drouot, were you expecting this, this conflagration that's been happening between the United States and Colombia? The United States and Venezuela, we expected it perhaps more.
Yes, it is not a surprise. I mean, now we are living the armed conflict against narco traffic. USA are not in war against Venezuela. I mean, it is a war against narco-traffic, against regional narco-traffic. Behind Venezuela, you have obviously Colombia. Why? Because Colombia is the first country of production of cocaine in the world. Since 2020, $1,500 billion have been the result of that production.
But Colombia's president, surely he's not a narco trafficker.
Well, that's one point of questions. Gustavo Petro, has been elected on one concept, the total peace. Total peace means we have to talk with the dissidents of FARC, with the ELN, one guerrilla, with the Clan de Golfo. Clan de Golfo is one of the biggest cartels today of Colombia. And at the end of the mandate of 4 years, Gustavo Petro is facing, in fact, a total war with many consequences. But Petro made many provocations against the USA, understanding that Colombia is one of the countries in the world, and that's the official name, best allied outside OTAN, outside
of NATO. Yeah.
For the USA, as Australia, as India, as Brazil. So yes, we have many points to.
So we should, Germania Rodriguez Poleo, listening to Pascal here, we have to take this at face value. This is first and foremost about fighting drug cartels. Do you agree?
As he said, this confrontation between Petro and Trump was coming because Petro has been provoking. Let's not forget that his US visa was removed because at the UN, he told the US Army to stand up against Trump. And per your question, yes, if this is about drug trafficking, you cannot be involved in this operation without Colombia being involved. Because even if the cocaine is moving through Venezuela, it's coming from Colombia. Now, Petro has been an ally of Maduro, has been an ally in the region of Castro communism. As a matter of fact, he did not have much to say about the stolen election last year. He has continued to denounce any kind of American, what he calls intervention in what's going on in Venezuela. He has more to say about that than drug trafficking in Colombia. So for sure, this was a confrontation that could not be avoided with the operation that the U.S. is doing in the Caribbean.
Let's talk about that operation, the buildup of troops, which includes more than 10,000 Navy personnel, 2,200 Marines, B-52 bombers doing flyovers off the coast of Venezuela, submarines, and more.
It's important for the American people to recognize these are narco-terrorists who are trying to bring poison into our country and kill our citizens. What happens to them, I don't really care so long as they're not bringing poison into our country.
Vicente Olive, again, is this really about fighting, you heard the U.S. Vice President say, narco-terrorists?
No, absolutely not. The United States has always been a country that needs justification for its imperial pretensions wherever it goes. It used to be the war on drugs in the 60s and 70s after the guerrilla insurgencies in Latin America became a problem. Then it became the war on terror when George W. Bush came in, and now we're back to this war on drugs. Yes, there is a drug problem in Venezuela and in Colombia, but the United States' aspirations do not seem to be oriented towards that. If you were trying to curtail the drug trafficking, then you would have taken prisoners, you would do investigations, you would try to go to the top of the cartel that's in place. That's not the case. And another thing is that when, according to the New York Times, only 10% of the cocaine that goes into the United States is from the provenance of Venezuela. So yes, there seems to be more of a regional military threat to Venezuela than a regional drug threat towards the United States.
So why?
Because the United States is an empire that is starting to slip and it's losing its grasp in the world and especially in Latin America. It's lost the territory to Russia and China that are well installed in Venezuela, and that we can fear a regional conflict if they do try to step in. So the United States is trying to claw back all these special pretensions that they had that they lost.
You agree with that, Pascal Drouot?
Well, more or less. Because in fact, we are facing today a conflict between some countries who are promoting global south, as Venezuela, allied with Iran, as Colombia. Colombia made a rupture with Israel. Those last month, Israel being one of the stronger allied to Colombia in defense. So Gustavo Petro, Nicolas Maduro, and so on, we will see the consequences of the new elections in Bolivia, Peru, who are countries of production, but also Ecuador, country of exportation. Some of them were promoting a global south. It means definitely with the ideology to be against, to promote a policy against the USA, against this image of the empire. In fact, ideology to hide the reality of their power, as Nicolas Maduro, as the Bolivarian regime. It means authoritarian regime, and for some ones, dictatorship regimes.
You agree with that, James Cohen?
I can understand why some people are starting to talk again about sort of the new version, the latest version of the Monroe Doctrine. We have something imperial going on.
Monroe Doctrine, which was this 19th century U.S. president who said, you can have the rest of the world. The Americas is our sphere of influence, the United States.
It had a different purpose in those days, but it became in the days of Teddy Roosevelt, let's say in the early 20th century, late 19th, in 1898, as you mentioned, it became a justification for U.S. intervention at the exclusion of other powers' intervention. And that's what we're looking at today. Apparently behind, I mean, first of all, nobody has proven that any of the boats blown up have anything to do with drug traffic. We don't know this. In any case, the U.S. government has not produced any proof, and they've been asked any number of times to produce it, and they have not done so in front of a judge or anything at all. So that threat is an invented one. It's a pretext. And what's really going on, we can only guess at the moment, but clearly it has something to do. It's difficult to attribute to the Trump administration any sort of grand, rationally thought out design, but one thing that certainly does preoccupy them is the presence of China more and more in the region. And it looks like the United States is trying to, in a sense, horn in, move back in and exercise strategic control as a way of becoming a counterweight to China.
Or Germania Rodriguez-Poleo, as one former Trump administration official told the Financial Times, is it that Donald Trump wants to see boats blow up?
I think there are a lot of things at play here. First of all, the Trump administration is not usually isolationist. In fact, the MAGA movement does not like to get involved abroad. However, there are different people at play here. We have Marco Rubio, who does want to do regime change because he's a Cuban from Miami against Castro communism. But we also need to look at Stephen Miller's role in this. And the fact that the Venezuela crisis represents the biggest refugee crisis in the Western Hemisphere. Stephen Miller wants to stop those migrants that are still coming into the US. The other side of that, as your other guest mentioned, is empire. It is Russia, Iran, China that are in Venezuela, representing a big threat in our hemisphere. So yes, the Trump administration is not being clear and honest about the drug trafficking part of this operation. But I think it's about trying to scare Maduro into fleeing, which, as we have seen before, is not going to happen. And I think the goals for doing this are various: stopping the flow of migrants and also removing that threat of U.S. enemies to have a basis just 3 hours from Miami.
And Germania, you heard James Cohen say these are boats that are being not boarded, not investigated, but being blown up. Last week, we saw the sudden resignation of the four-star general in charge of the U.S. Southern Command, that region. No reason given yet for Admiral Alvin Halsey's sudden departure. What's your guess on that?
Well, we have seen reporting that before his resignation, he was having issues with Pete Hegseth. So if we look at the timing of this, of course, it points to disagreements over this operation in the Caribbean. And again, as an American, one has to say it is concerning that we do not have any information about who is in those boats. I don't believe Petro saying it's all innocent fishermen. However, in the US, we have a democracy, we have a Congress, and American voters do deserve to know who are they targeting, who have they killed on these boats.
Vicente Olive, how's this playing? How's it playing in the United States and elsewhere, do you think?
Well, the problem here seems to be that Maduro is facing a choice that he has to make between how he reacts to this mobilization. This is the biggest mobilization of troops in the United States has done in Latin America in 30 years. The last time they mobilized as much troops, it was in '89, and that was when President Noriega was ousted from Panama. So Nicolas Maduro knows that very well, and it seems that if he wants to be in the same case, he has to do something. The United States is waiting for Maduro to make a mistake, to either kill somebody that's an American, to either react to, or to declare war like Noriega did, in order to be able to step in. But right now, the United States can't step in, so what they're trying to do is basically see how Venezuela reacts and how Maduro and his cronies resolute to put themselves forward in that sense.
All right, and there is collateral damage. Last week, the families of 2 Trinidadian fishermen announced their loved ones had been killed. Chad Joseph's aunt pushing back on speculation over fishermen who do sometimes dabble in smuggling in the southern Caribbean.
People will say all kinds of things we can't say. When they go out sea, we cannot say who is going fishing and who is doing what because people do not talk about those things. So you cannot know. I know my nephew as a fisherman.
He just wants to blow up a boat. We're in Israel, we're in Afghanistan, them kind of places or what? Here is the Caribbean, dog. Here is peace and love, Daddy. Here is peace and love.
But what about...
Now, note that the people of the government of Trinidad and Tobago has come out in the last 24 hours on the Trump administration's side. The government saying, quote, wishes once more categorically to express its strong support for the intervention of the U.S. in the region. So, Pascal Drouot, just to remind our viewers, Trinidad and Tobago, very close to Venezuela. Your thoughts on this? I mean, there are innocent people who've allegedly been killed now.
Yes, we are with armed conflict, and those targets are boats from the narco traffic. But I would like to come back on the ground. The reality.
We have no proof.
But
we have no proof of this fisherman. These 2 fishermen were drug smugglers.
We don't have here. But obviously, if they are targeted, that's because some organism of intelligence linked with justice, with the DA, etc., have convinced that those boats are moving drug. And drug today in Latin America, I'm come back from Ecuador, Colombia, etc. I've discussed with many authorities, with simple people, with journalists, etc. The key problem today is security, and that's narco traffic. Narco traffic today in Latin America, but we are concerned in Europe. We are concerned in Africa because these drugs coming back out from Venezuela, from Ecuador, from Mexico, with the cartel of Sinaloa, also a terrorist organization for the U.S. administration. All of that is very linked. But in the ground, people, some countries are feared. They think and they are saying that it is today unprecedented vulnerability of many states, including Colombia. I've been in Colombia in the 90s. I'm very linked with many people, many families of people who have been killed in the 80s by the cartel of Pablo Escobar, of Orejuela, etc. That's different today, but the reality, the threat today for Latin America, and obviously understood and perceived by the US administration, is the insecurity provoked by the narco traffic. You spoke, and you were right, on the migration. How can we explain that during many years, since 2017, Venezuela, between 6 and 8 million people have moved from Venezuela?
Economic sanctions have something to do with that.
We are talking. How can we explain? I don't. Only because I think it is a problem of governability. 6 to 8 people. I live that with in many sectors, economic, that's my reality, physical reality. With that regime, for example, how can we explain? Because it is a strong problem of governability.
So, Vicente Olive, should we be shocked about drug trafficking cartels, which are a reality, or about the death of these two Trinidadian fishermen?
Well, I think we can be shocked about both. I mean, I think it's unacceptable under any configuration of the law to bomb people up and blow them out of the water and then say they were terrorists. So that's, I'm completely appalled by that and the amount of people that have died. If there was 2 Americans that Venezuela had killed off the Gulf of Mexico, we would have been invaded already. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is that, yes, there is a drug trafficking problem in Latin America, but the way that the Cartel de los Soles, which is how they're calling the structure in Venezuela, is orchestrated is very different from the traditional cartels. We are not talking about cartel a la Pablo Escobar, where you have like Nicolas Maduro is the big boss and he's united with people and drinking tequila and telling them to kill people. That's not what it is. The Cartel de los Soles is a system that has been installed in Venezuela that allows a porous nexus of interest of power to flow through the Venezuelan government, all entrenched in drugs. So it's a network of people that are connected to the drugs, where you have also international actors like the Iranians and other people, but they all feed off the government. So that's what they call the Cartel de los Soles. So it's difficult to understand for people that don't know Venezuela, because they hear Nicolas Maduro is the leader of the Cartel de los Soles, and they imagine like he's Pablo Escobar sitting at a table, and it's not exactly that.
It's something in your novel you touch upon, the fact that you have the inherent weakness of the system that mafias can prey upon.
Absolutely, yes. And with all the economic problems too, then you insert the drug issue, and that's a way of people to make money. But it is a huge factor of corruption in Venezuela, no doubt. But it is not a structured cartel in the traditional sense.
Germania Rodriguez-Poleo, there's been a U.S. congressman this Monday who has called for hearings into these blowing up of boats. Is it a big topic of conversation where you are in New York City?
I will say it's a topic that Democrats have taken a hold on to go against Trump. You know, we just had these protests around the country, the No Kings protest. This is part of how Trump's critics are saying he's trying to act like a king. He's not going through the institutions. He's acting unilaterally in what's going on in the Caribbean. And 1,000% Democrats are taking on this and have moved in Congress, not just Democrats. We also had a Republican or libertarian, Rand Paul, who's been speaking out against the Trump administration's moves in the Caribbean. So definitely this is an issue in the States, not only for Democrats. Like I mentioned, the MAGA base is very isolationist. They don't like to do anything abroad. So this is a risky operation for Trump.
Why is he doing it then?
A lot of people are guessing, but like I said before, I think there is a few things at play here. I think if we look back at Trump's first term, one of his biggest initiatives was to overthrow Maduro. That's why he recognized Juan Guaido as president. That initiative failed. He came back to the White House. He didn't talk so much about overthrowing Maduro, but he started talking about Tren de Aragua, about Venezuelans being criminals, about immigration and drugs. So I think, like I said before, it's a little bit of everything. Wanting maybe a Nobel Prize freeing Venezuela, wanting to stop the biggest migrant crisis in the world, and wanting to not have a base for China, Iran in Venezuela as they do right now, and Russia.
All right, Donald Trump, who did not win the Nobel Peace Prize 2 weeks ago. Instead, it was Venezuelan opposition leader in hiding, Maria Corina Machado. And by the way, she heaped praise on the U.S. president, repeating his claim that Caracas-backed drug cartels, like those just mentioned by Germania, do threaten national security in the United States.
From the Tren de Aragua, from the Cartel de los Soles, to every single, criminal network related to the regime, with using all Venezuelan sources to destabilize the region and undermine institutions in the United States, democratic institutions in the United States. I mean, that's for real. That's their objective. But Maduro is not going to stay in power. Maduro is going to leave soon.
James Cohen, is that factually correct? Is Nicolas Maduro working to undermine the United States through these drug cartels?
I don't think we have any proof that that's the case. I think that for one, but I think that many folks were surprised at the choice of the Nobel laureate. Nobody was expecting this, but clearly the Nobel...
Was it a deserved Nobel Prize?
People who follow internal Venezuelan politics can say more than I can about the type of opposition that she represents, but from everything that I've heard, everything that I've read, she represents a very confrontational version of opposition in Venezuela, and somebody who admires Trump and who admires Netanyahu and invites Israel to come help solve the problem in Venezuela. That person is somebody that I would tend to be suspicious of regarding their peaceful intentions.
Germania Rodriguez Poleo?
That's someone speaking with democracy privilege. Unfortunately, Maria Corina does not have her pick of allies. The U.S. Republicans are the only ones that have been interested in the cause. This issue in Venezuela is about a horrific dictatorship that has killed, exiled, and jailed people for 25 years. This is not about Israel and Palestine. Maria Corina's main goal is not in the Middle East. She's working for Venezuelan democracy. And yes, she is confrontational because there's a brutal, murderous dictatorship that will not leave even after losing an election last year. She's been hiding for over a year. And what she's telling the world is, we have the votes, but we don't have the guns. So we need help here. And that's what's going on. In terms of the Nobel Peace Prize, it's more a recognition to the Venezuelans who have been fighting alone against that criminal dictatorship for 20 years, more than just one person. It's a recognition to the elections that Venezuelans won last year, and not only that, how they were able to prove that they won those elections.
That's very interesting, Vicente Olive, because there's two schools of thought. One is that it is a recognition of the Venezuelans themselves, and the other, this is a way to appease a Donald Trump to whom the Norwegian Nobel Committee could not give the Nobel Prize.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the Nobel Peace Prize was fantastic on two layers. The first one was, as my colleague was saying, it's a recognition of all the effort that the Venezuelan people put in place last year to be able to hold these elections and show that we were the majority. What she did, what Maria Corina Machado did with the people that she had, is nothing short of a huge feat. She managed to coordinate all of society and show that we had 2/3 the amount of votes that the government had, and publish it on the internet so there was no doubt about it. So that's factor number one. And factor number two, it's very good because it recenters the debate that we're having right now around Nicolas Maduro, because we're thinking a bit about Donald Trump against Nicolas Maduro, and it's not that. Donald Trump is facing Nicolas Maduro, but Nicolas Maduro is not the president of Venezuela. The president of Venezuela is Edmundo González Urrutia, who won last year. And this prize brings that back into the fold and takes away from Maduro's posturing as this poor little country that's been bullied by the United States, and shows that he is a dictator that was deposed last year, and doesn't want to leave power.
Pascal Drouot, do you think Donald Trump will try to overthrow Nicolas Maduro? There was a big article in the New York Times last week stating that the CIA is, working on scenarios.
No, I really think that for many years, that's the first time that the U.S. administration, U.S. president, has a clear idea of one threat for him, for the USA, the immigration, the narco traffic, how it does penetrate some states' structure. Obviously, we are looking that in an international situation, particular international situation, as you said, James. China is one of the biggest partners today of Latin America. The first commercial partner of Brazil. Brazil is the first economy in Latin America, also in many infrastructure in Colombia, even
China is also the first partner of the United States. So,
definitely. So Donald Trump coming back understood, perhaps because he listened Marco Rubio, perhaps because he listened Mauricio Claver, etc. Some people who knows and who said,
so he is going to try for regime change.
Danger. Now, why are we focused on Venezuela? Today, we are living an armed conflict against narco traffic with many cartels in all the continent was been defined as terrorist organization from Mexico, Central America, Salvatrucha in El Salvador, etc., etc. Yes, yes.
That definition itself is quite contested in the United States.
But we can speak about El Salvador. So he has a global vision. But why Venezuela? Because Venezuela is the center of, since many years, as Germania said, is the center of alternative vision, strong socialist vision, and since 10 years with the concept of global south. Why Venezuela having the first...
Right, but does he want to overthrow... My question is, does he want to overthrow Nicolas Maduro?
It can be one consequences of the conflict, armed conflict. And I hope so. Obviously, I hope so. When I see the Nobel Prize...
For a war in the Americas? You're hoping for that?
But, well, you know very well that the election last year has been stolen. Has been stolen. In 2018, they have been stolen. We know that that regime is based on clientelism. We know that Venezuela had the first potential of oil in the world. Venezuela must be the Singapore of Latin America. Venezuela is economically a disaster. It is no liberty.
But the question is about outside intervention, because the U.S. has a long track record of outside intervention where things go very, very bad for the citizens.
For the U.S. administration, I'm French.
Yeah.
Okay? For the U.S. administration, for the DA, Nicolas Maduro is the leader of the cartel of the Soles. What is the cartel of the Soles? Is a network of protection, network to facilitate the traffic of Tren de Aragua, traffic of many organizations as the dissidents of the FARC. Let's go to the frontier between Colombia and Venezuela. You will see all of that. So that's a real danger for all.
Okay, so James Cohen is not rooting for outside intervention. How about you, Germania Rodriguez Poleo?
I mean, that's a difficult question. Outside intervention, like I've said before, there's been outside intervention to help Maduro stay in power from Russia, China, Iran. Venezuelans need help. They voted. They do not have the strength to overthrow Maduro on their own. Does Trump want to unseat Maduro? Probably. We all should want to unseat Maduro. Is he going to put boots on the ground and directly go after Maduro? I don't think so. I hope his administration understands that Maduro alone is not the problem. This is a system that's been in place for decades. It even survived Chavez, so it would survive Maduro. This is not a matter of, killing Maduro and then Venezuela will know democracy. I think, like I said before, Trump is once again trying to scare him. He did this during his first term, but Maduro's not going to get scared and he's not going to leave. So does Trump want to unseat Maduro? Yes, I would say so. So do I. Is he going to go in there and do it? I don't believe so. Is China, Russia, and Iran already in there protecting Maduro? Yes.
Vicente Olive?
Yes, well, for me, the problem is twofold. It's not only the fact that we may have an intervention, but I'd like to spin the question around. For me as a Venezuelan and for the people in Venezuela, the problem is if there's not an intervention. Because what has happened historically in Venezuela is that the United States does this grand posturing, they start threatening, and they do bluffs. And what Maduro's regime does is that it clamps down on opposition, people go to jail, people get tortured, then time passes by, everybody forgets everything, and then it's back into business as usual. So what I'm the most afraid about is the people that are right now in Venezuela who are being jailed and who are being prosecuted, journalists, NGO activists, and other people that are suffering from this posturing between these two nations. I don't know if there's going to be a full-out conflict, but when you see the mobilization of the United States as the biggest in 30 years since Panama, when they actually overthrew Noriega, if I was a betting man, I'd bet that may be a possible case.
Venezuela's president and his vice president on message after that New York Times report about CIA plans for regime change.
I was writing to the liars of the world media, President, that are all day attacking our people.
They are imbeciles, Delcy. They are imbeciles. Everything they say about us, they are imbeciles. I have bad news for the schemers, the imperialists, and all their media outlets, websites, and agencies. Today, the political leadership of the revolution is more united and determined than ever to defend our homeland. You imbeciles!
So here's my question, because it's been said a lot since January the 20th that a lot of what Donald Trump does is to get ratings and it's performative politics.
Yeah.
Is that what we saw in that clip there?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Nicolas Maduro is an expert of performative politics. I mean, what he's doing is what my colleague in New York was saying, is Maduro, what he has to do is do nothing. If he moves an iota and he tries to provoke the United States, we may really go into this big conflict where there's China and there's Russia, and it would be very, very complicated. What Maduro should do if he's a smart guy is not do absolutely nothing with what they've already done. They put people in jail, they hide their head under the sand, and they just wait for things to pass and then just expect things to calm down. That's his best play, but I don't know if that's what he's going to do. And the United States can't really invade Venezuela without the Congress and the Senate. In order to do that, they'd have to have a full-scale, on-scale war with Venezuela. So that's why they're having covert operations with the CIA, where you don't need to have approval from the Senate. You can just have them go and do these covert operations.
You have, this conflict because you heard Germania mentioning it earlier, Pascal Trouot. There are divisions within Donald Trump's supporters, some more isolationist, some more expansionist. We saw that some are grumbling over the fact that he's spending so much time talking about the Middle East when he should be at home. Those are MAGA supporters who have been saying that, some prominent ones. So his vision of, I don't care about Europe, I don't care about Asia, but I care about the Americas, even that, what do you think when you see last week Donald Trump write a big fat check for Argentina's president because his economy is faltering? How does that go down domestically there?
Yes, but what I think we have to understand that drug traffic help Argentina, the fourth economy of Latin America, are domestic problems for Donald Trump, for the USA. All is very linked. When Trump is talking about what's this armed conflict, when he's helping few days before the legislative elections, Javier Milei is talking to his administration and to his people. He's saying all of that is part of MAGA. That's, for me, obvious.
James Cohen?
Well, Marco Rubio wasn't expected really to be a member of the administration initially. It was kind of a surprise that he was named Secretary of State. He was reputed to be not just the son of Cuban exiles and close to right-wing circles in southern Florida, but more generally sort of a neoconservative interventionist kind of guy. And Trump is giving him something like free rein in the Americas right now. There are different strands of this administration that are difficult to decipher and fit together because there is more of an isolationist side, and there is the Trump who flatters himself with having settled, I don't know how many, 7 or 8 wars, but the Americas don't fit into that scheme because he's not making peace in the Americas right now.
All right. Earlier, Germania Rodriguez-Paleo telling us how that Nobel Prize was also a prize for Venezuelans, as more than for just one person. Well, you could say that the same thing has happened over the weekend from the Vatican. Venezuela has its first saint, the so-called Doctor of the Poor, Jose Gregorio Hernandez, canonized by Pope Leo. Can you explain for us, Germania, the significance of this?
Oh, we were so happy about this. And it is like the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, we don't have a country anymore. There are millions of us outside of Venezuela, and we have to keep our Venezuelanness somehow. And this has been such a point of pride. I mean, all of us growing up in Venezuela know about El Doctor Jose Gregorio Hernandez. We have been waiting for him to be made a saint for so long. And it comes at a time when it means so much. This was a person who used his vocation as a doctor to help the poor, to spread knowledge about science, to help people's lives. And it comes at a time when so many people in Venezuela cannot get basic health care. This is a regime that calls itself progressive, socialist. However, people are dying. People are not able to get simple medicine. So the fact that an institution like the Vatican recognizes Jose Gregorio Hernandez and Venezuela at large, I mean, these are the things that have helped people who are fighting for Venezuelan democracy keep going, even though we don't get a lot of wins.
We start the conversation talking about blowing up boats. We finish with canonizing the doctor of the poor, Vicente Olive.
Absolutely, it's great. I mean, we can finally, as Venezuelans, have one thing where everybody can agree and come together. When we got the Nobel Peace Prize, there were still problems in Venezuela. Some people didn't like it. There was discussions. People went to jail for saying that they agreed with the Nobel Peace Prize being to for American Machado. Here, it's not the case. Absolutely, everyone in Venezuela and all the Venezuelans, as my colleague was saying, know Jose Gregorio Hernandez. He's a figure that is just venerated by everybody, and it's great for the country.
Should we project a little bit? Is the Vatican also sending a message to the United States when it does that?
Probably. I mean, I think the Vatican did say that there was a fraud in Venezuela last year, so they're on the side of democracy and freedom, I guess.
All right.
Hope.
We'll have to leave it there, unfortunately, for now. I want to thank you, Vicente Olive. I want to thank Pascal Drouot, James Cohen. I also want to thank Germania Rodriguez-Paleo for being with us from New York City. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.